Star Citizen's next big patch 4.0, which is still planned to release in the next couple of months, according to CIG themselves, is looking to finally implement a long-anticipated and monumentally important feature: jump points, which is finally going to take us out of Stanton and into a whole new star system and eventually beyond. That's why it's pretty exciting that the developers have finally decided to bring some clarity to the subject in both a recent Star Citizen Live as well as a live stream Q&A, which has brought to light some controversial decisions that will leave some players out in the next 4.0 patch from being able to play some of the new features if they run afoul of the law or enjoy playing as a pirate. So dive in with me as I take you through what we know so far and how it's going to change Star Citizen forever, and that's really not me just being hyperbolic. So if by the end of the video you think I did a good job and you want to support the channel, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to show some love and support. One other thing you might want to check out is the generous sponsor of today's video, Incogni. You probably already know that whenever you do something online, there's a huge number of companies that collect your information. Stuff like your address, social security number, employment history, etc. But what you might not know is that they buy, sell, and trade that information. Some of those companies use that information to do things like adjust your credit score and to do more nefarious things. Worst of all, if any of those companies get hacked, your identity could be at risk, which is exactly what happened to me a couple years ago when my identity was stolen. That's where Incogni can help. There are laws that allow you to force those companies to delete your data, and Incogni knows exactly how to use them. Their service automatically reaches out and applies the appropriate law and language to get them to remove the data. I just signed up and found out that there were over 90 companies with my personal information, so no wonder I keep getting invited to join in annoying scam investor groups. So if you want to be just a bit more sure that your personal information isn't getting into the wrong hands, or maybe you just want to be, free of some of those spam emails, you can get your personal data off the internet today with Incogni. Just head on over to incogni.com/morphologist and use my code morphologist to get 60% off an Incogni purchase. And don't worry, if you don't like it, you can always get your money back with their 30-day money-back guarantee. Again, that's incogni.com/morphologist and use code morphologist to get 60% off your order. Jump points are the fictional in-universe way that humanity alongside other races are able to traverse the vast distances between the stars in our Milky Way galaxy according to Star Citizen lore. They're a natural phenomenon akin to wormholes, but have a bit of a different look and behave a bit differently than how we've theorized in our modern day. They appear as large glowing anomalies which, when approached, warp space-time into a tunnel. Think Interstellar's interpretation of how entering a wormhole might look, only that you have to navigate and avoid hitting the side lest you be thrown out and damaged, ending up somewhere in between and perhaps out of reach of being saved. And these jump points come in two flavors: stable or transient. Now, the first one, stable or permanent, are ones that have been established that you'll find on the star map with infrastructure built around them to support the constant flow of commerce through them. This will be the type that we'll see in 4.0's first launch later this year, and these ones tend to be large and easier to navigate than their transient and temporary cousins. They'll also accept ships of any size in this first iteration, but this may change in the future to help balance the way these things work. This probably is something that we'll talk more about with the 1.0 release sometime in the distant future. Transient ones, though, on the other hand, they're not permanent. They can appear and disappear at any time, and they have different sizes from small to large, which will restrict different types of ships from passing through them. They'll also be a great deal more difficult to navigate through, having more twists and turns, making it hard for you to get to the other side. But the positive of using these ones, of course, being that you can circumvent the security at the big permanent ones. These will appear virtually anywhere within a star system and can be scanned down using specialized equipment. If you scan one down, you can then mark its location and sell it to other players for profit. This, I imagine, then, is going to be a pretty profitable exchange between smugglers, explorers, and pirates. But to reiterate, these won't be in 4.0, and we have no current release date for when we can expect to see them. How you enter these jump points will come down to whether or not it's a stable, large, known jump point or one that's transient. Large, stable, permanent jump points like the ones in 4.0 will be guarded and monitored, requiring you contact ATC in order to be able to align and transit through. Approaching them will begin with requesting jump permission from ATC, then aligning to the transit axis alongside other groups of players who have contacted ATC around the same time as you have. ATC will then permit you, along with the group, to transit through, alternating back and forth between either side of the jump point to prevent players from hitting each other traveling in opposite directions. The developers noted that this won't take into account player parties for this first iteration, so each party member will need to contact ATC at the same time to have any hope of transiting simultaneously. Failing to contact ATC or failing to properly align before trying to enter will result in you being bounced away violently. At least that was my experience when I got to try it as an early test version a little bit earlier this year. As you might have already guessed then, this is gonna be a big deal for those of you who have Crimestats, as ATC at this point doesn't talk to criminals. I'm gonna circle around back to this after I continue explaining the rest of the process. So after being granted permission by ATC, you'll then be given a timer for when your group will leave, leaving you open to combat and having to evade until the window opens for entry. Failing to align just before the given time will result in you having to re-queue for the next jump group. Successfully jumping in will put you in a line ahead of or directly behind other players in your group in a sort of ducks in a row formation. During this transition, you'll need to control your ship's pitch, yaw, roll, and distance from the side of the jump tunnel. However, the distance between ships in front and to the rear of you will be constant and uncontrollable. Failure to properly navigate and touching the edge of the tunnel will result in your ship's jump drive taking distortion damage, which will build until the ship is eventually ejected violently from the jump tunnel, causing heavy damage. This is meant to be a penalty and not a shortcut, so developers stress here that this is not meant to be a way to get around exiting at the prescribed exit. To this end, 4.0 will also be introducing jump drives, not to be confused with quantum drives, which is the device we use to transit in system. This is the thing that's going to affect how well we're able to navigate in a jump tunnel and how much damage we take when we hit the side of said jump tunnel. But some of you, I'm sure, are wondering if you can blow other ships up while you're traveling. Well, the developers thankfully addressed this by saying it wouldn't be possible since you're in nav mode. In nav mode, you can't use your guns. They added that if you tried to exit nav mode and go into SCM to activate your weapons, that your jump drive would shut off and you'd be thrown out while taking serious damage. Attempting then to shoot other ships is going to be impossible, and this will also go for handheld guns like railguns or any other type of device, which shouldn't be effective in the tunnel since those projectiles also don't have jump drives and should also be ejected, but they said that this might need some testing. Getting ejected means that you'll either be at your origin or your destination system, but at a random and greatly distant point away from the center of a star system. At least that was the result that I got when I tried this in the first test. As a side note, this also means that you won't be able to tow ships through since vessels being towed also wouldn't have an active jump drive, so sad day for those of you who are looking forward to doing that. They did say though that this wouldn't count for ships that were on your own ship, like Parasite craft or ships in your hangar, so they'll be able to transit through the jump point just fine. But I'm sure that we can count on the ships phasing through the wall and blowing us up in the first iteration. I'm kidding, I really don't know. I'm looking forward to testing this. Successfully getting through the jump point will result in you being ejected alongside everybody else in the group that you entered with in a scattered and distant formation. They liken this to a kind of shotgun approach into exiting, which was a practical way of preventing ships from hitting one another, which was exactly what was happening when they first tested this. But the other reason is that having a set single point for people to exit through would result in it easily being camped. So this way you have a way to get ready to defend yourself, as you'll be in nav mode on the initial entry into the new system. And while they didn't specify exactly how far away you'd be from your fellow jumpers, they did say that you wouldn't be hundreds of kilometers away, so I think they're hinting towards us being relatively close, but not so close that it's easily campable. But you might not have to worry about being camped on the pyro side, because they also said that they've changed the way the pyro side works a bit. In this new version, there's going to be a UEE jurisdiction immediately surrounding the jump point, alongside a fully functional and modern space station that you'll be able to dock at just before you set off into the lawless lands of the Pyro system. They also said then that the Pyro system is vastly lawless outside of this immediate area, so that you don't really have to worry so much about it being UEE controlled. So this is to say that you can commit criminal acts in Pyro so long as you're not near the jump point, as it won't count towards your UEE crime stat. And that brings us full circle back around to what happens if you do have a crime stat and you try to go through the jump point. Well, in the current planned 4.0 release, the developers explained that if you have a crime stat 3 or higher with the UEE, that you won't be able to transit through the point from either side. Given that the transient gates won't be in 4.0, this then hard locks criminals from being able to use the gates until their crime stat is cleared. And this to me felt like a bit of an odd decision, and a rather one-sided one that cuts out a portion of the community that enjoy the challenge of pirating. And yes, it is challenging, as much as some people would like to believe it's not, and it doesn't always bear fruit, given the amount of time that needs to be put into it in order to actually pirate anybody. Since players then can't transit without ATC permission, this hard locks these criminals out of half of Star Citizen's 4.0 play space and beyond. To me, the exciting part of Pyro has been its lawless nature and the danger as well as the opportunity that it provides. The lore seems to support that pirates use it as a safe haven to launch raiding parties from. After all, Xenothread and Ninetales have been doing so up until now since they introduced those factions in Star Citizen. My fear then is that this artificial restriction will actually cause pirate players to stay in Stanton as opposed to going to Pyro, where profits as a pirate might be lower due to the known risk to lawful players. Pirates create risk to other players, which creates in turn more profitable and less profitable routes depending on the risk of that area, ultimately creating what I see as much more exciting shipping routes and areas to generally operate in for other forms of player activities. My hope is that Star Citizen has a healthy balance of safe areas that allows risk-averse players to operate in and avoid risk, as well as a profitable and much riskier area where players can white-knuckle it through and make big bucks. I've always thought that the possibility of interdiction is really exciting, even if actually getting caught can be a bit scary and generally is to be avoided. It makes a successful escape and victory, in my mind, all the more sweet. Personally, I'd like to see them roll back their stance here on restricting passage through the gates based on crime stat. Give the gates free reign to shoot criminals, go ahead, do that. But at least give them a chance to crash into a group and get through at the last minute through a daring attempt. Make it challenging, make it risky, but don't just outright prevent them from using it. Now look, this is obviously just my opinion, but I think the highs and lows, the risk and lack of risk is what makes a good MMO. But I totally get where some of you might be coming from when you're looking for a more single-player experience. It's not my place to say that this isn't the game for you, that Star Citizen is not the game you're looking for, but I will say pretty much everything they've said in recent years has had them leaning towards an open universe where anything can happen, and that's why I'm still all in on Star Citizen personally. So how are you feeling about this first implementation? How does it sit with you? Are you satisfied with their approach to limiting criminals from passage? Or are you like me and think that we should give our pirate friends some access to the same gameplay that we have? Also, how do you feel about the new look of jump points? Do you miss the majesty of the big gates that we had before with the big ring around it? I know I do. Let me know down below, and if you like the video and you want to go a step further in supporting my channel, please consider becoming a Patreon member today, where you can enter to queue your referral code into one of my videos and get the possibility of even getting a javelin like a few of my Patreon members did. Anyway, hope to see you in the next one.